Everyone, Mike Palmer from Know Your Rights Group and Success Coaching International with another very important live video update tonight. Wow, what a interesting 24 hours or so it has been. People storming the Capitol building in the US, another significant step closer to completely untested vaccines being rolled out across Australia. And then, of course, we have the media completely contradicting themselves in relation to how supposedly contagious this whole COVID-19 thing really is. So we've got a lot to cover tonight. I'm going to get straight into it. First, of course, the most significant news of today is, of course, the storming of the US Capitol building in Washington, DC. Now, I heard about this very early this morning. No, I'm not usually up at that hour, but I'll get to that later. And the first thing I heard was that the media was suggesting that there were only tens of thousands of people, out there rallying in support of Donald Trump, and yet all of the photos and videos that were online clearly showed hundreds of thousands of people out in force in support. Now, a little later on, they claimed that people at the rally were being violent. And again, all of the footage showed that people were just singing and chanting supportive messages. There was no violence at all. And of course, to finish off, the media were claiming that, rebellious rednecks were storming the building. Yet again, when you look at the photos and the video, people are quite clearly wearing very Antifa-like attire and outfits. Now, look, I wasn't personally there, obviously. So I can't say for sure what did or what didn't happen. But once again, the photos and videos that are on the alternative media platforms completely contradict that which has been shown, of course, by the mainstream media. Now, one thing I do know for sure, and that is going to be a very, very interesting next couple of weeks in the US to see how all of this plays out. And I have heard whisperings, mumblings of there being other rallies run right here in Australia and New Zealand as a result of all of this coming weekend. So please keep an eye out for those if they are of interest to you. Okay, so back onto home soil. It was only a day or so ago that Qantas announced that it was going to be selling overseas flights again. Specifically, it was mentioned to the US and to the UK from the 1st of July. Of course, the problem with that announcement was there was also the reminder that people who hadn't been vaccinated against COVID-19 would not be allowed to travel, and there was also mention of the requirement for that vaccine passport. Now, what was interesting to note was that this rally in the US has been planned for many days, so this, almost certain civil unrest in the US, which according to the media, with so many highly contagious people all crammed in together, would surely mean that the COVID numbers are going to absolutely explode over there. Okay. Plus, of course, the new super strain of COVID that's coming out of the UK, which I'll get to a little later in tonight's video, that despite all of that, Qantas was still somehow able to magically know that despite these serious factors, we're going to be able to travel to those places in just 6 months' time. Now, if anyone out there watching this works for Qantas, if you could please get hold of that crystal ball and give me a call, there's a couple of things I'd like to look up. Okay? I mean, what is going on there, people? Okay. Now, not only that, but Scott Morrison called an emergency cabinet meeting because of this, super strain of COVID out of the UK, and he's come out today and stated that all COVID practices must remain in place despite the rollout of the vaccine. Now, the obvious question is, if these COVID-safe practices work, then why the need for a vaccine? Okay, if a vaccine works, why the need for COVID-safe practices? They just seem to be making this stuff up as they go along. And if neither of them work, why are they pushing all of it on us? Scott Morrison came out and said that COVID-safe practices will be with us throughout the entirety of 2021. We're only 7, 8 days into January. I mean, holy cow. Okay, this is shaping up to be a momentous year but you need to be on top of your game. You need to be aware of what's going on. Now, I said a similar thing on on the last video I did on Sunday night. Okay, if masks work to stop the spread of virus, but most people are still wandering around wearing a mask in Victoria and now in Sydney as well, then why the outbreak? And of course, if masks don't work, why the need to reintroduce them or to introduce them into Sydney? It just doesn't add up. Okay. Now, in the same vein, I also heard a whole heap of stories on the radio yesterday, and not that I usually listen to the radio, but I'm having problems with the CD player in my car, and it's a whole other story. But I heard all these stories about people who were lining up to get a COVID test, but they were being turned away because there weren't enough people to man the testing stations. And this morning I saw it with my very own eyes. Now again, I'm not usually up that early. Usually I'm working away answering everybody's emails and comments until the wee hours. Okay, but for one reason or another, I had to get up early this morning. I went past one of those COVID testing stations at 8:30 a.m. and the line was as far as you could see. It was insane. Now, I had this wild and crazy thought. Now, I'm sure it's just me and, me being a, crazy conspiracy theorist and all, but the thought occurred to me. If you're healthy enough to get in your car and drive to one of these COVID testing stations, or better still, healthy enough to walk for 5 or 10 or 15 minutes and stand there or sit in your car for hours on end waiting to get tested, especially during the heat of summer, and then you're still healthy enough to drive back home or, walk back home, then there's probably nothing wrong with you. At least not physically anyway. Okay? Just use your brains, people. As I've said before, do you think people lined up and queued in the heat of summer for hours back in the dark ages when the bubonic plague was going around? Do you think they just stood there and waited to be tested to find out if they had this thing? Hell no! They were dropping dead in the streets. Either that or they were laying in bed unable to move, coughing up their lungs. Okay, that was a true pandemic. I don't even have words, not that I can use on a video like this, for what this is. Okay, I'm sure a few of you do, but I can't use them, otherwise Facebook and YouTube will just delete the video. I'll leave that to your own imagination. But again, please, people, just start thinking. And if there's anyone who's watching this, that it's been forwarded to you by a concerned friend or family member, if anyone still believes the mainstream media propaganda machine, I want to point out that I also heard on the radio yesterday a story of a man in his 30s in Victoria who apparently went to the Boxing Day sales in Chadstone and then went to the Boxing Day cricket test. Okay, he didn't show any symptoms until the 31st of December, so 4 or 5 days later, but didn't get tested until this week. Now, the reporter that was talking about this story made it crystal clear, and you can go and look this up for yourselves. I'm sure it's doing the rounds on the news. Okay, that authorities were not at all worried, okay, about this man being infectious at Chadstone or at the cricket. They were just wondering who it was that might have infected him, because of course he wasn't showing any symptoms. And the authorities know full well that there is no asymptomatic transmission of COVID-19. Okay, it was only an issue once he started showing symptoms. Now, of course, today it's come out in the news that this man has been traced back to the northern Sydney beaches cluster, of course. Okay, but again, go and look this up. They're telling you that the authorities are not worried about this man turning up in front of all these people on Boxing Day at the cricket at Chadstone, whatever, because he had no symptoms. Please be aware that lies are so clear and obvious and blatant now. I can't understand how anybody still buys into them. Okay? So, of course, here's the question. If asymptomatic people are not transmitting the disease, why have we got all these muzzled muppets out there? That we've already proven that the CDC have already agreed that yes, this mask is not going to stop you from catching it. It might possibly maybe stop you from transmitting a little bit. But if you've got no symptoms, it's not going to stop anything. And if you have got symptoms, stay home. Very simple. Very, very simple. Now, we have, again, on the point of masks, been absolutely bombarded, okay, with emails from people who are still wearing these masks, these pathetic little flimsy paper things, purely just because they're worried about getting a fine. So I've said it before, I'll say it for the millionth time. If you're worried about getting a fine, if that's the only reason you're wearing a mask, please grab this Aussie Speeding Fines book right now, turn to chapter 3, go to the 3-step process, okay, use the general 3-step process, okay, and use that to challenge any COVID-related fines. Okay, we've also got a whole heap of messages from people who are complaining that their bosses won't let them work, this is especially coming out in Sydney now, without a mask, okay, even if they have a medical exemption. Now, as we explained on numerous videos previously, okay, if wearing a mask, if the requirement to wear a mask was not in your original employment contract, they cannot force you to wear one now. If they try and force you to, if they threaten you with cutting back your hours, if they won't let you work or whatever, lodge a complaint with Fair Work Australia immediately. Private corporations cannot override your medical requirements. Now, speaking of medical requirements, we're getting, again, a lot of messages from people, especially in New South Wales, who are asking about all the letters and the links and the legislation that we have on our vaccinations page. Again, knowyourrightsgroup.com.au/vaccinations, okay, and noting that it primarily refers to Victoria. And that's true, that's correct. You need to look up the relevant legislation in New South Wales. Now, no one seems to want to put in any effort for themselves. They want us to spoon feed everybody. So I will help you to a small degree, and I'll show you. This is the page, the public health orders and restrictions from, there it is there, health.newsouthwales.gov.au. This is the section under mandatory face coverings. Now, this is what it clearly says. People are not required to wear a mask if they have a physical or mental illness, condition or disability that makes wearing a mask unsuitable. For example, a skin condition, an intellectual disability, autism or trauma. There's a list of them, okay? You don't need proof of that. You just need to say that you are affected by wearing masks. If you want to know some of the effects that masks have, go to our vaccinations page, go to that section and just read some of the reports and articles. It goes on to say a person may remove a mask if they are at work and the nature of the work makes wearing a mask a risk to the person's or other person's health and safety. Do you think breathing in your own carbon dioxide for 8 hours a day might be a risk to your health and safety? Absolutely, okay? So please, go on the website, have a look at that page, print a copy off like this, take it into work with you, carry it around in your back pocket if you want to, print off some of the other articles that we explain on our vaccinations page, all the dangers associated with long-term wearing a mask. And when I say long-term, I'm talking about more than 20 minutes because that's all they're designed to be worn for. All right, so please go and look that up. Now, again, I do want to acknowledge formally and understand that a lot of you have only just found out about us, okay? And that's great, but we've been here for the past 6.5 years teaching people about their rights. What have you been doing during that time? Okay, we have busted our backsides, okay, to upload one of these live video updates twice a week for almost the last 6 months now, covering all of this information. Again, what were you doing during that time? All right, please go back and watch these videos. There is a description or a title at the top of each video that tells you what we cover. COVID-related stuff, masks, rallies, whatever. Then there's a more detailed description below that goes into more detail about exactly what we covered. Okay, so look at the title first, see the ones that are of most importance to you, watch them first, and then sift through the other videos and look for the descriptions, okay, that relate to whatever your issue is, and watch those videos before you bombard us with emails, okay? Then, please, if you want to find out more, go and listen to our really detailed 2-hour podcasts that, again, we've been running for the last 6.5 years And again, in particular, over the last 6 months, we have been primarily, talking about and discussing COVID-related issues. So if you're now just learning about them, you're just finding out about them, they're now just of concern to you right now, great. Please go and watch the videos, go and listen to those podcasts, and get your head around all that information. Now, of course, once you've done that, if you want the detailed step-by-step processes, if you want the strategies, if you want the background information, anything fine related, grab the Aussie Speeding Fines book. There's a link in the description. Okay, more background information on the Constitution, why no law since 1973 has been validly and lawfully enacted, all that kind of stuff. Grab the Know Your Rights book. There's an entire chapter, chapter 9 or bonus chapter 1 if you like, entitled Mandatory Vaccinations. Okay, most importantly, what that has is your My Will letter. If you don't yet understand the importance and power of expressing your will, okay, please read that chapter and start using those My Will letters. Remember, our politicians are elected to do our bidding. They are there to express our will on the floor of Parliament. They're not there to be surreptitiously passing all these laws in the background that set everybody up for failure. Okay, look at all of these public health and safety acts and similarly worded documents. They were enacted years ago to prepare for this eventual outcome. So look at the legislation that they're enacting now and look at what that's likely to mean in a few years down the track. All right, so I want to finish off tonight by addressing this supposed new highly contagious strain of COVID that I mentioned before that's supposedly coming out of the UK. Now, it must be just me, but clearly I'm confused because wasn't this already a highly contagious virus? Good old Dictator Dan kept telling us that it was a silent, tricky and wicked virus. I mean, isn't that why Victoria was locked down for more than 3 months and people are still wandering around the streets looking like muzzled muppets? Because this was already a highly contagious and deadly disease. You know, the one that 99% of people never get and that 99% of the people that do get it fully recover. That one. So what's this new highly contagious strain all about? Well, what does that mean? Can someone explain that to me? And please, given that 99% of people will never get COVID and 99% of people who do supposedly get COVID completely recover, what is the point of a vaccine? How are we going to know if this vaccine is successful? Okay, are the powers that be in any way suggesting that this vaccine is going to address that remaining 1% of 1%? Because if not, it seems like a hell of a lot of trouble to go to for not really much reward. If 99% of people don't get it and 99% of people get it, recover, well, why this push for a vaccine? What's the point? It doesn't sound like a really good investment of time, effort and energy to me. But again, look, that's possibly me, maybe I'm missing something. But if some of this resonates with you and makes sense to you, these are the sort of questions that I urge you to ask and answer for yourself. And then once you've gone through that process, start asking these questions of friends and family members and start getting them thinking in these terms. Okay, and then of course, once you've done that, start asking your members of parliament who are there to express your will. So I'm going to leave it there for tonight. Again, there's going to be more updates. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of things developing and happening over the coming weeks. We are taking a break for the next couple of days, get everything ready for our first radio show back next Tuesday night. That's the 12th of January at 8 p.m. You can just go to knowyourrightsgroup.com.au/radio-show and you can watch that there or listen to that there, sorry. And in the meantime, I know a lot of you are still on break, some of you are going back to work on Monday, but please use these last few remaining days to please get informed, get fired up and get proactive. And the best way to do that is to get those books that I mentioned before. Obviously our Know Your Rights book, the Aussie Speeding Fines book if you've got anything to do with fines, and anyone who's struggling financially wants to know the step-by-step process for discharging any personal loans, any credit cards, grab that Bank Secrets book. You can purchase these individually via the links that are in description. You can get all three in a combo pack with our Know Your Rights tote bags. Again, there's a link in the description, so please grab those because they really will help you fast track your learning about your rights and how to stand up for them. But in the meantime, whatever you do, please go and listen to those radio podcasts. Please go and watch those 6 months worth of videos that we've taken all the time, effort and energy to upload for you. They're on YouTube, they're on our Facebook group, they're on our Facebook page, they're on our MeWe page. There's plenty of places to access them, so please go and do that. Hope you all have a fantastic weekend. I look forward to speaking to you all again on Tuesday night.